So this is an open forum. Anybody that would like, but we want to focus this morning with Kalki. We focused upon the mood, the purpose. Am I not intelligible with the mic? No. I mean, this is for the people online. You need the mic for the online, but is the mic messing it up for you in this room? Is that... Okay, so suppose I'm like this. Can you understand me at all or no? A little better. What to do? What to do? I like to give priority to the people in front of me. Oh, God. I like my eyes, Prabhu. I want to keep them. So we're going to focus on this hour on book distribution, particularly in Chicago. Oh, my God. So if anybody, how many of you distributed books? How many of you distributed books in Chicago? Woo! All right, and me too. So maybe I should start with myself just briefly. Should I do that? Is that okay? Okay. So I officially and permanently joined the International Society for Krishna Consciousness on June 17th, 1973, at about noon, and about 3 hours later, Kishore Kishori were installed. I had stayed in the Evanston Temple for 2 weeks in February, but I wasn't an official member yet. The next day, I went out on Harinam, and the next day, I was at O'Hare. Now, in those days, we didn't have saris. We just had pieces of polycotton cloth. And as an unmarried woman, I was wearing saffron, of course. And it was very heavy cloth. Like this has 7 pleats. Those saris had 25 pleats. So it was pleated from here to here. And then it was heavy cloth, so it was like this on the floor. You had a border of dirt on it. And in order to keep it on your head, you had to have a safety pin. So we would safety pin it. And after we were running around the airport for a while, the pin would move up to here. And you can see this on some old photographs of the women with it pinned like that because it would move. And then first day, of course, I didn't have a nose ring, but pretty soon we all had a big nose ring, like it was big, like an inch in diameter nose ring. So, and then the brahmacharis often had different colored saffron because we would dye it with rit tangerine, you know. And so, now I remember Radhasham particularly, he used to like to wear a turban. You remember that? So there'd be one color kurta, one shade of dhoti, and one different shade of turban. So anyway, so we go out to the airport looking like that. I remember one man walked up to me and said, "You guys look like a bunch of clowns." And I thought, he's so offensive. And then I looked around, I'm like, we really actually do look like a bunch of clowns. But we were young and exuberant. And first we just said back to Godheads. And so we were literally running. "Would you like to take this magazine about love of God? Would you like to take this magazine about love of God?" And I can't do that anymore, but you know, I could do that then, and collecting like 25 cents. And then the BBT party came and they said, "Hey, you guys got to do big books." I should also say in those first 2 weeks when I was distributing just back to Godheads and as a brand new member of the Hare Krishna movement, I was able to philosophically defeat 100% of the people I encountered in O'Hare Airport, which gave me so much faith in Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, the library party came and trained us up. So first they got us pieces of silk cloth, colored, because there weren't Indians in America at the time. There weren't Indian stores. So we got these really pretty silk saris. And of course, we would show the George Harrison page in the Krishna book and so forth. So that went on a little bit. And then they decided that we should be wearing skirts and like blazers. And we would have a little button that looked like Apple Records, right? And we would always show people the George Harrison page. And we would especially target the military people on payday. That was a biggie. Yes. And it was a lot of fun. So I'm just going to tell you two little stories. So in one of them, Sri Govinda had ordered, this story happened after I was married. I got married after I was in the Hare Krishna movement for 4 months to a very senior devotee, which meant he'd been in the movement for 3 years. And he was a temple treasurer. So because my husband was a temple treasurer, I was aware that Sri Govinda had ordered some paraphernalia for Kishore Kishore from India, but it was stuck in customs. And we needed $600 and something to pay the customs fee to get that. So again, I was aware of that because my husband worked in the treasury. And if we didn't pay that money by the next day, everything would be sent back to India. So we were at O'Hare, and you remember Kalalapa, of course. So Kalalapa comes up to me and she says, I just distributed books to a drunk sailor and he gave me 600, whatever. It was exactly what we needed to pay for Kishore Kishore's paraphernalia. It was one of those stories. The other little story that I like is we were out on Harinam on a Saturday night, and after the end of Harinam, it was late, Mahamuni said, who wants to go to O'Hare? Now, we never went to O'Hare on a Saturday night. It was dead. It just wasn't worth the time and effort to go on a Saturday night. But he said, I challenge anyone who wants to go that I'll distribute more books than they do. So I was never a big quantity distributor, but somehow or other I thought, okay, I'll do it. So we're taking the bus to O'Hare and he's going on and on and on to me about how many books he sells. And I'm thinking, I'm going to beat him. I'm going to beat him. And like I said, I never sold that big of a quantity. Anyway, so Saturday night in O'Hare, there was one person every 10 or 15 minutes. It was dead. Actually, coming here in Helsinki, the airport was like that. There was just nobody there. So it was just completely dead. So I was just praying to Kishore Kishore. I said, please, please let every single person I meet take a book. And what happened was, not only did that happen, and I know this sounds kind of funny, but I wasn't selling the books at all. I mean, I know generally that was our experience as book distributors, but this was like ramp it up about 10 times. I would just meet somebody and I would open my mouth and I didn't even know what I said. I was just the observer, like, what am I saying? And then they'd go, sure. And I'm like, what did I say? I don't even know. And they would take a stack. And then I'm standing there for 10 minutes. And then someone else, and this was repeated the whole time that we were there. And I beat Mahamuni. So that's why he didn't come. So he's not here to defend himself. I don't know. Anyway, so those are the two little stories that I wanted to tell. So open up. Especially I'd like to hear from anybody who distributed books, 1, 2 stories. And we have a mic, another mic. Are you the runaround mic person? Woohoo. Okay. Put your hands up again and let's just see anyone who distributed books at O'Hare. Everybody, not everybody. Or anywhere in Chicago. All right, so just go around and let's ask people. Yes.
Okay. I'm the low man on a totem pole in every way imaginable. And out at O'Hare, I was the smallest most foolish, stupidest person making that effort out there. But, you know, it looked like people got more maha if they even just went out. So, so that meant that, you know what, it turned out that meant that a lot of devotees were super kind and generous and helpful because they saw that I didn't know what I was doing. So, unless, of course, they were under the gun. Like, I won't name names, but number 1 and 2 devotees out there, here's something that's kind of neat that happened. I somehow, by who knows how, I'd managed to stop, you know, we used to call netbagger. Anybody here knows what a netbagger was? Coffee, you know. somebody from like Great Lakes Naval Training Base, and that's it. They didn't make the grade, so they don't give them a regular duffel bag. They give them a net bag. They're gone, and they'd pay them in cash, big amount. So they were a prime target. So I would maybe stop someone like that, and all of a sudden, number 1 or 2, you know, the guys who would make $1,000 a day, they would come over and on the plea of training me and helping me, which was, it was genuine, it was legitimate that they were doing like that. They'd come over and they'd take the hit. And so, that was good. But then another thing happened. I'll name names now. Banabhatta and Bopadev. So Bopadev, he was so kind, so gentle and sweet, such an amazing devotee, and they'd put me with him, knowing I needed that kind of help too. And he would stop someone who was like an amazing, wonderful possibility as a recipient of a book. He'd stop them, and then he'd turn to me, and he'd say, "Give him a book." Banabhatta too, huh? That's a class act. These are devotees that were genuinely a class act. Now, the only one more story. So I'm crazy for Krishna. Everyone, right? Poor Sarvabhauma, he's insane. He's crazy. It's more trouble than he's worth, maybe. Actually, Tamal Krishna one time said, "That's it. You're off the party." That's in Radha Damodar Vilas, Volume 2. I'll throw that sidebar, and then I'll get back to airport. But went on the bus from Boston down to Florida and then diagonally up to Denver. By the time we got to Denver, everyone was like sick of yours truly. And so what happened was I was invited to go into the office in the Denver temple. And there was Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Vishnu Jan Maharaj. And Tamal Krishna immediately says to me, "You're off the party. You're going to be on a bus, but it's going to be a Greyhound bus taking you back to New York to your family." And so I fell Dandavats to both of them. I fell straight out in front of them. And I was reaching for their ankles. And I called out, "Prabhus, Prabhus, please don't kick me away. The devotees are my only friends in the world." And then I kind of peeked up to see how that was going over. And Vishnu Jan caught me. And this sweet, gentle, beautiful rumble of a chuckling laugh came up out of him. And he motioned to me to get up. He had he'd given Bhagavatam class that morning. He had a big, beautiful garland on. As I'm getting up, he puts the garland on me and he says, "We give you one more chance." I looked over and Tamal Krishna was not happy. So okay, Ruchi. Oh, last story. There was a devotee, maybe almost as bizarre and weird and crazy and insane as me. His name was Ruchi. And he was number 1 a bunch of times. He could pump those books out. And so they said, "Well, all right, let's see if we can put Sarvabhauma we'll put Sarvabhauma there with Ruchi and see if we can solve a few problems that way." So Ruchi, we'd be here at, and he'd say, "Get the books, get the books, get the books." So he'd put them in the van, he'd say, "Put them in the van." So I'd gather the books together, put them in the van, and then we'd be on our way out to O'Hare, I'd be at the wheel, and he'd say, "Both hands on the wheel." So that was our relationship. And we get out to the airport. Okay, the first day I worked with him, Terminal 1. Okay, 2 more minutes. No, okay. If anyone's curious, they can find out what Ruchi said. I'll tell you. Hurry. Oh, okay. If anyone's curious, I'll tell you what Ruchi did.
Haribol. No ladies, back and forth.
Yeah, sure. All right, one of the ladies.
All right. Okay, since I'm here, we won't waste any more time. So, as we should be aware, it's not just the airport.
Sorry.
We always felt like that. We felt like second-class citizens because we weren't distributing big books. A lot of Back to Godhead magazines would go out. And matter of fact, if you look at those old Sankirtan newsletters, and you'll see, especially that period, 75, 76, 77, they're doing, practically, including the Back to God, there's about 1 million pieces of literature a month. It's amazing when you think about that. Because nowadays there's a lot more temples, a lot more devotees. They're not doing 1 million pieces of literature a month at all. And, nowadays, of course, you can go like this and people just walk up to you. You can just tell them, Krishna's God, Bhakti Yoga. And they go, oh, have you heard of Bhagavad Gita? Sure, I've heard of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, very easy nowadays. So my reason I went on book distribution is because I didn't want to wash pots. So, and when you join, that was just put you in the kitchen first.
Yeah, that didn't work for me.
No?
No, they still made me wash pots and polish.
Well, on Sundays. We had to do it Sundays. Sunday, your day off.
I had to do it every other day, or like the morning washing pots and silver, in the afternoon at O'Hare. So that strategy didn't.
Yeah, I was.
You got it lucky.
I was motivated. It's a pretty shy person, so the airport was a little hard for me because I was kind of shy. Had to be aggressive. But we had about 2 parties, 4 devotees each. We would go on the streets. Generally, we just did the intersections because you could do 200 magazines each a day. We had it all mapped out. Mahamuni was generally in Ranganov. They managed that street party. And we had systematically, because you try to plan it that maybe in a 2-month period, you hit the intersection once. And you come back in 2 months, it's fresh again. So you work it for about a week. By Friday, it was like pulling teeth because they've seen you. But the Monday, that would be pretty good. So you find the lights that had of course, the most time, because you got 60 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. And you want to do 2 or 3 magazines in 30 seconds. So, how did you do that? Really just by being aggressive. We had candy and different things, but generally you had to get the first car to give. If the first car didn't give, nobody else is taking. If the first one gives, you can get 2 more for sure. You don't have to say anything. You just walk by and they give it to you. So the general method was that first card, you got to get him to roll the window down. And even if he doesn't give, you pretend like he gave. So the other cars were like, oh, okay, that person gave. So you kind of block the vision so they don't see what's going on. And you beat that window. Because they're ignoring you. They're like, now they're mad, which was good. Because when you're mad, you're distracted, right? So they roll the window down, and just when they're about to scream at you, you toss the magazine in the back seat. Because cars were real big back then. How are they going to reach back there and get the magazine? Right? So now they're really mad because you threw the magazine in the back seat, and they're like, and you just start screaming, hurry up and give a donation before the light turns green. Come on, what are you taking so long for? What's it all about? You can read about it later. It's in the magazine. Come on, hurry up. Okay. And now the other cars, they seen you beating on that window. So they're ready. They're not wasting time. Everybody, okay, come on, get your magazine. And if they didn't give, then you block it, because usually they're screaming at you really, so you're kind of like, okay, thank you, yeah, thank you. And then you just go around like they took one. that they gave something. Now, the next day, you go out and you hope you don't see those same people again. Because now they're throwing magazines out the window sometimes. Or sometimes, strangely enough, 3-4 months, I swear this one car, we see him all the magazines are stacked up in his back seat. He never took them out. Every month there's a new issue, right? And they're just in the back seat, all our magazines. And he always give.
Thank you.
So that's kind of the...
Thank you so much. I was just thinking how, at O'Hare, we had, it was always heated or air conditioned. And there's no rain. So you're out in all kinds of weather like a traffic cop. All right, who's next? One of the ladies, please. Aw, come on, Mekala. Okay.
Do I have to press something? Do I press this?
It's on.
It's on? Okay. Well, unfortunately, I don't remember any incidents, but I remember the energy and the mood. We felt we had authority. We had a right to be there, although there wasn't, it came from above. And we felt we were on a mission. And we felt strong. And the association I had from those days has set the mood for my life.
Thank you. That was beautiful. The sense of empowerment, yes? Excellent. Mr. Sena?
Yeah, I got a short one. We were on traveling Sankirtan from the Berkeley Temple. We had a van load of books, and we just kept going further and further east. And by the time we got to Minnesota, we were going in parking lots. We'd show them a book, Srimad Bhagavatam, and they said, "Oh, I got that at the airport." And I'd ask them, "Which airport?" "O'Hare." And we went into, let's see, where else? Indiana, Iowa. Everywhere we went, people in the parking lots were saying, "I got that same book in O'Hare." Iowa, Minnesota, even way out in Idaho, all over the U.S. People were saying, "I got that book in O'Hare Airport," and we were thinking, "What is this O'Hare Airport? Where is it?" And then we found out it's in Chicago, and so our party came, and then that's the only time we got to see the Evanston Temple. We came in, and everyone came in from book distribution, and who was the Swami? Tripurari Swami was already in Berkeley. Who's the one in Hungary? Shivram Swami. He was there. We sat in the room with him. He was reading Krishna book, and he just said, "Yeah, this is our business. We read the books, we distribute the books." And so that was my first contact with O'Hare Airport. I didn't even go. I just heard about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
I was just going to add what Siki was saying about all the Back to Godhead magazines in the back seat of the car. But Prabhupada remarked to us, right, Karna, that if they just touched the book, their spiritual life has begun. So if somebody came through the airport and they were very arrogant, puffed up, I would just take the book and pat them on the shoulder and say, "It's okay, sir. Go ahead." It'd be like, because some people are just naturally agitated and angry, So Prabhupada said, if they just touch it, their spiritual, that was like music to our ears, because we could just, if somebody was a complete, jerk,
Mike.
touch him with the book. So it was just Prabhupada's grace in every way that to give this mercy to these people. He was the personification of compassion, and we were his instruments in giving it to all the people. But it was a very glorious time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. All right. Who would like? Oh, we have Chakri.
I just wanted to, thank you, Hare Krishna. I just wanted to mention a quick thing. Historically, I remember, because this hasn't been mentioned probably for a good reason, but anyway, historically, I remember coming in Evanston, and right about that time, a little after that time, there was a problem with this grandfather. His name was Yanoff, and some devotees or whatever. And, so they had a problem, and they were on the radio having debates with Tripurari Swami on the radio. So finally, what they did was they had all their family come to the O'Hare airport with these clickers, and devotees couldn't distribute anymore because as soon as you tried to distribute a book, all these people would come with these clickers and stand around them. The only person they could distribute was Ranganath Prabhu, who's down in New Orleans. And so after that, and then Ganapati Maharaj started doing these records, these albums. We had the whole Evanston temple in the basement was full of records, thousands and thousands. And from those days, and Ganapati Swami's party one year, in a couple of months, they collected $200,000, and I don't know what happened with the Lakshmi, but anyway, so that was a historical thing that it was interesting to note that.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Okay, who would like to contribute next? Anuttama Prabhu?
Let's see, how do you get this picture up on this?
Malati? Mekala? You could get Mekala?
So probably this is not the best story because I really didn't like book distribution. I just wanted to make flower garlands and flower vases and stay at the temple and do Harinam. And but they decided, or Sri Govinda decided, that I should go to the airport. And I used to spend the whole day crying in the stairwell. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. And yeah, so I didn't have the same blissful experience. It's just not what I do. Anyway, you asked, so that's my story.
Well, thank you for trying.
I did.
Thank you for trying. I'm sure that Krishna appreciated all your loving tears in the stairway. Okay, yes. Let's take it to Gora.
So I had the good fortune to meet Nandi Keshwara Prabhu, Dharma Prana, and Duryodhan Guru in my hometown of Winnipeg, 13 hours north of here. And this was in the spring, and I started going to the temple, and Nandi Keshwara Prabhu said, "We're going to see Srila Prabhupada in Chicago. Do you want to come?" It was the July 4th weekend, 1975. And I said, sure, I'd love to meet him. And so we drove down here, and I'm coming from a temple with maybe 12 devotees, and then coming into a beehive of about 400 devotees. I think it was 108, or some say 100, brahmacharis from Radha Damodar that were being initiated. 75? Okay. Very, very intense mood. And I stayed for the 11 days that Srila Prabhupada was here, July 3rd to whatever 11 days is after the 3rd. And I was totally blown to the 14th, blown away by seeing Srila Prabhupada arriving at O'Hare. But since we're talking specifically about book distribution, I went to pursue my career here in Chicago for 5 months, and then came back just in time for the Christmas marathon. And the night before, I was wearing a yellow tuxedo, and the next day I was on State Street, which seemed like a highway to me because it's very broad, State Street. And I had my ISKCON Relief can, 175 BTGs in a box, candy cane prasadam. And I found that the nicest people that I approached were the Afro-American mamas, the women. They'd always give you a quarter. And that was the cost of a BTG back in those days. It wasn't $4 or $4.50 as we see now. And I was told to try to get $1 for every BTG if I could do that. And that was my goal every day, 175 BTGs or don't go back to the temple. And so then shortly after that, in January, I was put on Mahamuni Prabhu's party. And I guess there was about 6 of us brahmacharis. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see snow in the winter because we went down to Shreveport, Louisiana. And we were chosen, we were given a light, the longest light, so that you could approach the maximum number of cars. And as Sikhi Mahidi Prabhu was explaining, you go up to each car, you gesture to them to roll their window. Hello, sir, we're out here today we're missionaries spreading love of God all around the world. All the big kids get one, and we'd hand them either an incense stick or a lollipop or a bottle of Spiritual Sky oil. And I remember one of those times when I went to do that, a gentleman pulled out a Colt 45 and he aimed it at me. And he said, "Do you know how to dance?" And I was petrified. I was just waiting for the bullet to go through me. And I was walking back from the car. I said, I'm really sorry for disturbing your day, sir. And the light turned green and all the cars behind him, beep, 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 beep. And he had to go. So I was saved by Krishna arranged a green light for me. But then later in the day, old Smokey came by. You know, the cops had the Smokey the Bear type hat. And hey, boy, you got a permit to be doing this? And no, oh, do I need a permit, officer? You get in the back of the car and took me down to the police station, put me behind bars, took off my neck beads, took away my japa beads because he said I might try to hang myself. And, I was 21 years old, just a kind of a kid, and I thought, well, gee, I always, I'm trying to give my life to God and I'm getting thrown in jail. I guess this is the test. And that happened again in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I'm not sure if it happened in Dallas again, but I got put in jail at least 3 times on that trip. But it was exciting because it increased my determination even more. It made me realize how much people are in the mode of ignorance. Mahamuni Prabhu would pull up to a motel and we'd all duck down in the back of the van so it looked like just one person was booked in. And then we'd all sneak out. And then we turn the beds onto their sides so there'd be room for all the sleeping bags. And then we'd take a dhoti and we'd put it across the big bathroom mirror so that we wouldn't see ourselves and get into the bodily conception of life. And I was given the service to pick flowers because we put some vases for a little makeshift altar that we had. And anyway, there's much more that can be said. But I'll allow others to speak. That was my first Sankirtan journey. More to be continued.
Wow.
I just want to say one thing. 10 years ago, I was working O'Hare with Shankar Pandit, and African American lady came through. She was like in her maybe 40, and I approached her, and I showed her the book, and she saw Krishna's name. She said, "That's my name." I said, "What?" She said, "My name is Krishna. My first name is Krishna." And she pulled out her driver's license, and her name was Krishna Williams. I said, "Where did you get that name?" She said, my mother used to work downtown Chicago, and she got a book called Krishna. And because Manasuda and I opened up downtown for Krishna books, and we were doing 100 each every day. And for small ones, paperbacks. And she said, "Yeah, my mother liked that name so much, she named me Krishna." And she wound up buying 3 Bhagavatams for me. She was really sweet. So we all became devotees through book distribution. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Well, by Krishna's mercy, as I explained yesterday, I had joined the Radha Damodar's traveling Sankirtan party. And probably after 10 years of traveling, close to 10 years, maybe 7, whatever, we wound up in Chicago, Tripurari Swami's party. But many devotees don't know that in order to be successful at Sankirtan, which Srila Prabhupada approved from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Maharaj Prataparudra, were a disguise to meet Lord Chaitanya. So for those devotees that don't know, we used to, of course, wear a Western dress, but we also wore wigs that they wouldn't identify that we were being advertised as a cult in those days. We weren't even from this planet. Oh, no, you're talking about the airport. I'm talking about streets and the airports both. But Gaura Prabhu's pointing out that at the airports they would announce that there are people collecting donations wearing wigs, right? And some people would love to grab the wig off of your head and expose you. Expose you. And about getting arrested, Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, we would get arrested so often. So often. I mean, if a week went by and I wasn't arrested, I'm like, wow, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I didn't do it right maybe I wasn't aggressive enough this week. And usually it was harassment that they would let us out at the end of the next day, the next morning. Although one time I was arrested on a Friday and I wasn't going to go before the judge until Monday. So while I was in the cell, the guys down the cell, they kept saying, hey man, did you get him? Did you get him yet? I said, oh man, I know what they're talking about. They're asking, they're encouraging the guy to rape me, right? Yeah. So I said, oh, Krishna, I better preach to this guy day and night. So I did, and Krishna protected me. But I hadn't showered for 4 days. And neither had I eaten. Because what do they serve you in jail in those days? Right? Bologna sandwiches. Did you say peanut butter? No way. No peanut butter. It was meat. So the guy in the cell said, hey, you won't take it, I'll take it. And just to appease him, because he was twice as big as I was. And I didn't want to have to wrestle the guy if he was going to try to rape me. So I gave him my sandwiches. And the shower was common. You'd have to strip down for a shower, and I wasn't going to do that. Although I did have to use the toilet, of course. So on Monday, usually we bailed each other out the next morning if you weren't let out. For some reason, the devotees let me in until Monday. I don't blame them, but they let me in until Monday. And as I went before the judge, and the judge said, boy, you need $100. You didn't have a license. Judge, we're not selling it. We're monks. We're passing out our Bibles for donations. Boy, this ain't no Bible. You're going right back to jail. I said, I haven't eaten in 4 days. You're going right back to, he was being macho, going right back to jail. So anyway, in about an hour, they called me out of jail. And as I was walking out of the courthouse, the devotees were just pulling up to bail me out. And I said, wow, good to see you, devotees. Hope you brought some prasadam. Oh, don't you know? Today's a fast day. Fortunately, it was Srimati Radharani's appearance day. That's a half-day fast day. So by the time I got to I was smelly and dirty and whatever for 4 days. But I showered and it was time to break the fast. But we would do anything. We would do these things. We were like commandos. We slept in the van. We would park on the side of the road anywhere, and we would put out a tin foil. We'd have charcoals. We'd sometimes bake potatoes and carrots or whatever, or sometimes we just ate raw. But we were just on a mission for Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was building Mumbai Temple, Vrindavan Temple, Mayapur Temple. So Tomar Krishna Goswami would preach to us, every penny that you collected buys a brick for Mayapur, buys a brick for Vrindavan, buys a brick for Mumbai. And even Srila Prabhupada made a statement that if people give 1 farthing to this Krishna consciousness movement, they're saved from going to the deepest, darkest regions of hellish existence. So we didn't even think about the austerities, weren't even austerities, even though it was 30 below zero here in Chicago. We would be doing Sankirtan and people would roll down their window. I don't know what the hell you're doing out here. Here's some money. 30 below zero, it must be a good cause. So nothing would prohibit us from serving Srila Prabhupada in this capacity. It was almost a regulative principle that we were, go to the morning program, take prasadam, and out on Sankirtan. By the way, by Krishna's mercy, we were able to distribute so many books. Srila Prabhupada was very, very pleased. And we were benefited, the people were benefited. We had a program on Radha Damodar, so we would give them a gift greeting item, and then sometimes they would just give a donation. So we wouldn't always give them a book, but after a certain amount of donations, we would give a book, make sure that we gave out a book. So that was street Sankirtan. The airport Sankirtan was very different. It was a higher class of people. But both ways, the Radha Damodar Party distributed so many books here in Chicago and around the world. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Haribol.
I think we should really, can we all really thank him for that? Can we stand up? Stand up. I want us to stand up. I want to really thank you for fasting for 4 days and not taking a shower as part of Prabhupada's army. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. I never had the opportunity to distribute books in O'Hare Airport, but in the late 70s, I mean 79, 80, I started a program at Cook County Jail where we had devotees. We had to get 100 people to sign to get a chaplain, so we had a chaplain status. So devotees were bringing in prasadam, and we distributed books to the inmates in Cook County Jail. So that was my first endeavor in distributing books. Secondly, I worked in distributing books on the south side of Chicago, which is predominantly a black area. I distributed Bhagavad Gitas on the street, and I would tell the people, I said, hey, look, they said, what is this? I said, this is the book that Dr. Martin Luther King used to inspire him to do the civil rights movement. So that went over very well. So I was able to sell a lot of books that way. Also, recently, in the last maybe 15 years, we've been engaged in distributing, I think, thousands of books on the south side during our annual Billiken Parade. And people are very eager to get Prabhupada's books. They be begging, give me a book, give me a book. So it's always a great experience to spread this Krishna consciousness movement by distributing books. So I'm very thankful to have had that opportunity.
Thank you. And I'm just thinking how Srila Prabhupada started the prison preaching program in India even, before he came to the United States. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay. First, I want to ask if there's anybody here present also that we didn't call on yet. Okay, 2 more. Let's take care of here, and then we can do that. Thank you, Subal. Yes, go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I'd like to thank everyone here, or everyone that distributes books, Prabhupada's books, because in 1972, I came across the devotees down on State Street, and I got a Back to Godhead magazine. I was hooked. I've been hooked ever since. And I was hoping to meet this fellow named Rudra here today, because I believe that's the one person who gave me that opportunity to really understand and complete my search for God. I had always been I had been taught to love God all my life, and I was searching. And when I got Back to Godhead, all my questions were answered. So what I wanted to say is, you never know the power of Krishna, just like you never know the power of the holy name. You don't know the power of the book, Bhagavat. We were talking about that earlier. There's so much transcendental energy and strength in what we're doing. So I'd like to thank each one of you that have ever distributed a book because you saved my life. Maybe not you personally, but somebody just like me. I was one of those black kids off the west side of Chicago. It's so, I'll just leave that there with my thanks. But I want to share a little story with you. One of my friends, he was a great basketball player at the time and a gangster. And I used to talk Krishna consciousness to him and give him books and stuff like that. I had lost contact with him for about 30 years. And then I saw him one day on the south side. And he ran up to me and he was so excited. He was just grinning and smiling, and they used to call me Boss Man. He said, "Hey, Boss Man, I just got out the penitentiary." He said, "I did 25 years in the penitentiary. And guess what?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Man, I took that Krishna," and he had some nasty words. You know, "I took that Krishna stuff down in the penitentiary down in Stateville, and I had those vice lords and those disciples coming putting cigarettes in my hundi box." He said, "I had a hundi box for Krishna." And I just looked at him and I was overwhelmed. I was like, man, you don't know what Krishna is going to do. But Krishna saves our lives in so many ways. And you may never know what that book is going to translate out into. Prabhupada used to say something about if the book might be on the shelf for years, and whoever that book is intended for might grab it, and it'll be. So thank you for your distribution efforts, and may we all continue to do that. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Glory to
you.
Prabhupada.
Haribo.
So I thought I would just share a little bit, something that I really
Can you have it straight on?
appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that I appreciated about those days when I was actively engaged in Sankirtan. Most of us here had this experience, but some of the devotees didn't. But we had a certain camaraderie amongst all of us. And the environment that we were in, especially at O'Hare, there was no security in those days. So people would come down.
Prabhu, Mike, you really like straight on.
Okay. People would come down the terminals, and we would be strategically located where they would all come down. So at every spot in the airport, which was in each terminal, probably about 3, one in the end, 2 in the middle, there would be 3 or 4 or more, depending on the terminal, devotees standing together. And, if somebody hit you in the head, which was a fairly common occurrence, or banged you with their briefcase, you would look over and you would see Trana Karta shaking a hand and giving somebody a book, and you go, okay. And it would re-enliven you to just go back and distribute more books and undergo whatever austerities that you had to undergo. But that camaraderie was also there in the temple. You would get up and go to the morning program. Everybody would be there. It would be extremely enlivening, and everyone would be chanting japa together. And so I guess I should express some appreciation for the devotees who were out on traveling Sankirtan, like Sikhi Mahidi Prabhu and other devotees that we've heard about, who they would be gone for all week and they'd come back for the Sunday feast. And but for me, I really did appreciate that, because when I joined, I would distribute in the streets and street lights, but to come and have that opportunity to distribute at the airports and have that association with devotees, it was quite enlivening, and the atmosphere was pretty transcendentally electric, let's say, inspiring, certainly, myself and most devotees I know. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Can I?
Is there we have someone else? Yes, you? Okay.
Awesome. Hare
And
Krishna.
please, like, try to have it straight on, yeah.
Got it. So it's Hare Krishna. It's been about 1 year. Yeah, about 1 year since I distributed my first book. And coming from, a person who received a book, and that's how I got started. A really funny quick story. I was reading Prabhupada books, alone in Los Angeles, and I thought there was no society. I thought there was no devotee. So when I heard, I was so ecstatic. I ran to the temple the first chance I got, and because I thought this was esoteric information. I was like, no one knows about this, and it's impossible. Like, this is truth. And so in the last couple months, I got really ecstatic about book distribution. So I bought a couple cases and, just passing them out either in, Sankirtan or, when we go in Harinam, around the block or such. And so I thought in my trip to LA last month to bring a bunch of books. And so I get to the thing, I buy, what do you call it? A check bag. I buy a check bag and the bag is full of books. And it was overweight, so I already paid $40 and they're like, it's going to cost $120 additional for this bag to go. And I'm just looking at it. I have all my camera gear for my movies and I'm like, I'll distribute books here in O'Hare Airport. And so that's what I did. And it was a bunch of Gitas and Chant Be Happies, and they were all gone by the end of it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, so I think, oh, yes, Mitra. Oh, who? What? You or someone else? Who? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, back in the 80s, books were going out like crazy. Tripurari Swami was here. There was like 30, 40 brahmacharis in this building. The only girl in the whole building was the cat. It was just all brahmacharis and sannyasis. Books were going out like crazy. Tripurari Swami was talking and he said, there will come a day when this slows down, and if one person goes out with a bag of books, he'll be a hero. And we were like, no, this is never going to slow down. And it did slow down. And like, now we got devotees, like, I don't know who you are, but you want to start doing book distribution. That's really hopeful for the future. And I just wanted to say thanks for distributing books and keeping it going. That makes us feel really good. Oh, you're a hero.
1 minute. One other thing we also miss is that we would, in the fall time, college football games. Anyone do those? Or was it just a street? 50, 60,000 people, and you've got 2 hours in the parking lot. So, of course, what was the most popular game to work? Arizona Razorbacks versus Georgia Bulldogs. Because you could go in the park and go, oh, you a hog or you a dog? You can say that with enthusiasm. I'm a hog. Will you get one? So, you can have fun selling books at the game. And also one last point too. People probably don't realize that, those of us who are in the black bodies who had to sell books in the South because, Chicago was too cold in February. It was hard. And I remember trying to explain to the Sankirtan leader, don't put me in that location. Because I said, I don't see any black people in this town. Please don't put me there. No, you're not that body. You got to go out and sell those books. So we'll let your imagination go on with it. Usually the police come and stop you. And they say, boy, you got 2 problems. You're black and a Hare Krishna. So, anyways, the ladies may feel they have a hard time being a devotee. We also have a tough time too. Haribol.
Oh, Thank you. I'm actually glad you reminded me of that. Sometimes I just think of like, it's really hard to be in the Hare Krishna movement as a female, but yeah. All right. So we're supposed to.
Hare Krishna. First, before I speak, we're gonna watch a trailer of Tripurari Maharaj speaking. So you can roll it.
We were all, of course, young and sadhakas and so forth. This is a book about bhakti rasa, but it has some application with regard to our life as sadhakas, and it draws my memory to how we, myself, Kashi Ram, Ganapati, Giri Jadava, were just three examples, and they were the first examples of the plan, to have devotees come from other temples to spend a month with me there at the base, at the feet of Kishore Kishori. They'll give us the power, then we'll send you back to your area and you can replicate, and so forth. As sadhakas, our relationship, our love for one another, this is a very endearing story to me that speaks, I think, to how we felt, the kind of brotherhood and sisterhood. I know we're supposed to call ladies mothers, but they were really sisters, we were all just brothers and sisters. Many of us were from most alternative culture, and I never talked to women when I sold books, but I never had a problem talking to women devotees and teaching them how to sell books and helping them and being as much equally an inspiration to them if I could be as to any of the men. But anyway, the story after it's twofold. Ganapati Maharaj he became a sannyasi later. He still is today. He was the accountant. So we would sell the books at the airport. We would come back, and I would have all the devotees. We'd open a cloth, a dhoti, put it on the floor, and everybody would pour all the money in the center. No one could count the money, how much each one counted, or how many each book everybody distributed. We just put it all in a pot, and then we collected the quarters and whatever, the dollars, and then we gave it to Ganapati Swami, who did the accounting. And he must have opened a bank account, and he sent the money to the BBT, right? And so about 3 weeks into the month, this is the first month at Kishore Kishori's feet that this program had been launched, which became the most colorful chapter, I believe, or Prakash window section of the Leela of Kishore Kishori that made the Chicago temple as famous, or if not more, than Los Angeles and New York, who had been the big cities, and had many more devotees and so on and so forth. This is what made Kishore Kishori famous, is this airport, book distribution Leela, and rightfully so, because we'll go on, we'll see further how that's the case. But with regard to this feeling that we had, kind of the brotherhood, sisterhood, and so forth, when after about 3 weeks of being together, Ganapati Swami took the liberty, without speaking to me, to spend a fair amount of the money other than on printing books and sending it to Ramaswamy. Again, we were living out of these book bags. We never bought anything for ourselves. You had to get toothpaste, but the idea of spending money on yourself or something other than book distribution, that just wasn't on the radar. And so it became apparent that he had spent some money and a fair amount on something else. And so I said, what's this about? And then he said, well, we bought this and brought it out he told me, I should say, we bought a new plate for Kishore Kishori, dining plate, a silver plate. And I said, well, that's a nice thing to do, but I mean, he didn't even tell me about it, he didn't even ask me, and so, and he said, well, that was, the other part of it. The reason we did it is because we wanted to give their old plate to you. I mean, it's very beautiful how they felt. I mean, I wasn't asking for any kind of, recognition or distinction from them. We were all just brothers doing this, together, giving our all in all. Yeah, I was the leader, but I was just the leader by my example. If you could follow it, I was setting a certain pace. We'll get up at this time, we'll, and so forth. And so they that's how they felt. They wanted to, they wanted to give Kishore Kishori's remnant plate to me as a dining plate. I wept. I thought, how embarrassing this is. How endearing, that they felt like this about me. I mean, it's just an example of the kind of love and camaraderie that we had, which was so much part of our success. And then when it was about a week later or so, I'm still reeling from this, when it was time for them to leave, and then they all approached me again, and they said, we had a suggestion for the party, how it could be maybe improved. And I said, well, what's that? And they said, well, originally the plan was you would have 2 or 3 or whatever, small number of devotees come here and be trained and go back to their base. But we were thinking, you need a permanent party of 2 or 3 men. And then that party will train others who come and go back. And they wanted to stay with me. We didn't want to, I didn't want them to leave, but I thought, well, that's the program, And so, but they told me that, it was very endearing. And it's like I say, it's like within the realm of sadhana. This is the Sanchari Bhav, they loved me, I loved them. And together that augmented our love for Prabhupada and dedication to him, and our love for Kishore Kishori. Of course, they had to negotiate with their temple presidents why they weren't coming back. And they were successful in doing that somehow or other. So I guess Kishore Kishori wanted me to have a permanent party. And then we started, inviting others and for the next round. And as this was going on, of course, the plan started to unfold, and the success in Chicago, which was, again, as I mentioned earlier, a place to legally distribute books, where it was not yet established by law that you could do that in other airports, like dominoes, they began to fall in the Los Angeles airport, this airport, that Kennedy Airport, Cleveland Airport, you name it. There must have been at least a dozen of them in major cities that Miami opened one after another, following the case. I think that maybe Los Angeles was the first case, and Chicago was a precedent. It was already legal, and so it was all coming there we were. This was our base at the feet of Kishore Kishori, and in my perspective, they made all of that possible, and they and as such, this particular very colorful Leela of theirs, if you will, book distribution at the Chicago airport, is what made the Chicago temple famous amongst all of the devotees. And later on, of course, over the years, this went on for years. The leadership changed. Sri Govinda and Sri Lekha, they moved on to some other service. I forget what was the reason behind that, but Uttama Sloka from Canada became the president. And then in the final hour, so to speak, of competition between now Los Angeles and New York and Chicago with regard to book distribution, Uttama Sloka could tell the story better than me. The devotees in Chicago, he had a conversation with Ramaswar after a big marathon, who had sold, the most books and so forth. Ramaswar said, we said this many in Los Angeles. And I think Uttama Sloka said, wow, yeah, that's a lot. And he led Ramaswar to believe that Los Angeles had been triumphant. And then he said, but here, he floored Ramaswar by telling him that we had, done more books in Chicago at that time. So the crown goes to the beautiful couple, Kishore Kishori, with regard to book distribution. I believe that this particular deity, Kishore Kishori, that they were particularly involved in more than any other deity in the world, empowering and if not conceiving of and responding to a petition of a simple, humble brahmachari, who they put into a spiritual trance. Please give us the power to take advantage of what's going on in a small way, in a large way. They responded to that. They made it all possible.
I think now we should chant Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So one of the first times I found a Krishna book in the forest in northern Illinois, and I was chanting. It's all in my book here. But I was chanting Hare Krishna for 6 months, and I never knew there was a Hare Krishna movement. So one day, some friend of mine was in Chicago at the mall, big mall here, and he met devotees, and he got I found a small Krishna book, and I was like all of us. We were searching for God. Most of the devotees were actually searching and very sincerely trying to find the truth of life. So I was doing the same thing, and I found the Krishna book. Somehow Krishna placed it in there. It was in perfect condition. And so this one guy came, and I met him, and he said, "Hey, Tom, you know that Krishna stuff you're into?" And I was like, if anybody said anything bad about Krishna, I would get upset, So he goes, "Oh, take it easy." He goes, "I was in Chicago, and these bald-headed guys, I think they were Buddhist monks or something, they were passing these out, and I got one for him." And he pulls out a big silver Krishna book, and I was like, "Wow, where did you get that?" And he told me what happened, and I was like amazed. And then he gave me a card, Sri Sri Kishore Kishori Mandir, Evanston, Illinois. And it was like Wednesday, or it wasn't a Sunday, but it said Sunday feast and all that. And so I just booked to the temple immediately. I came, and I knocked on the door, and Chakri Prabhu opened the door. He was the first devotee I ever met. And he said, "Oh, Hari Bol." I said, "I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 6 months, and I just found out there was a temple." And he goes, "Oh, well, that's fantastic. Come in. We're just having prasadam." He said, "Prasadam." And and I said, "What's prasadam?" And he said, "It's food we offer to God. It's spiritualized." I said, "Okay." And he took me upstairs, and this Chinta Prabhu was cooking. He made this khichdi that was like from the Vaikuntha planets. It was just amazing. I come from an Italian family of amazing chefs. My father owned a very famous restaurant here in Chicago, about 10 minutes from here. And I never tasted anything like that in my life. And I'm eating on a wax paper, and butter and ghee dripping all over. And I had strawberry halwa, and I must have ate for an hour. I couldn't believe I was just like eating and eating. And then Chandrasekhar Prabhu came and talked to me, and he said, and I told him how I found Krishna book, but I couldn't read it properly. I couldn't pronounce a lot of the Sanskrit names. I would just read whatever I could read. And I started chanting Hare Krishna because I read George Harrison's thing in there, chant Hare Krishna. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. And that all made sense, so much sense to me, So Chandrasekhar took me into Tulsi's room in the beautiful Evanston temple and started to read Krishna book to me so beautifully. I just was like floating, pronouncing all the words beautifully, reading the stories, explaining to me things. And I was really in bliss. And then Sri Govinda, who was president at the time, such a gentleman, and we still talk all the time. Such a great devotee. And he asked me, he said, "Trana Karta, we go out and distribute Prabhupada's books. Well, I wasn't Trana Karta. Back to Tom, we go out and we distribute Prabhupada's books. Would you like to go out and try it? We're going to a concert tonight. And I said, sure, no problem. So, I was used to being around people because my family's restaurant was always packed with people, So I went out, and my first night we went to a concert. One devotee would park the cars. All right, drive. And then you go, like you're part of the whole scene, right? And then you go up, and they showed me how, get him to roll the window down, stick the BTG in, stick a spiritual sky incense, which stunk up the whole parking lot, and spiritual sky. And the first night I did over 50 BTGs, so it was really, I had to taste. That was it, And when I came to the temple, it was March of 1973. I found the Krishna book like in October of 72. I was 17 years old. And I came to the temple, and Kirtananda Maharaj was there, and his devotees, and they were installing Kishore Kishori. And I had hair down to here. And they said, you want to help do some work after? I said, sure. So I was laying tiles, the black and white tiles we had in Evanston, on the floor and doing different things. And my life in book distribution started there in Chicago doing BTGs. So then we opened up O'Hare, and I'd like to read you a little passage from Sri Govinda Prabhu Maharaj now. Huh? Sri Govinda's watching me. Sri Govinda. Hare Krishna. What is the problem?
Let's hear what the old guy says.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to read this little passage here. I need, Shiki, I need your glasses. Shiki, I need your glasses. I left my glasses in the hotel. Thank you. A little better. So here's some real nectar right here. This is Krishna gives this entitled Krishna Gives Us O'Hare. Krishna paved the way for Srila Prabhupada to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. And I'd like to also add that all the book distributors, amazing, they all joined around the same time. We all joined like 72, 73, and it was just an incredible time. And so here, Krishna paved the way for Srila Prabhupada to fulfill the order of his spiritual master, was to print and distribute as many books as possible in the English language. Yeah. Hare Krishna. So here's Sri Govinda. This is Sri Govinda talking. So there was our Harinam party of about 20 or 25 devotees going downtown to State Street. And we were on State Street, and the police immediately came and arrested us. So I thought, wait a minute, this is America, freedom of religion. We must be allowed to do this. So I went to the American Civil Liberties Union. This is Krishna's mercy, because they were looking for a way to stick it to Mayor Daley. They didn't like Mayor Daley too much. This is all Krishna's arrangement. Stick it to Mayor Daley, and so they loved the idea of taking our case. They said, get arrested 10 times, and then we'll file a case. So we kept going down. I got arrested probably 4 or 5 times. So we kept going down there and getting arrested and thrown in jail. Trana Karta, you were there. You were arrested a few times, I remember. Anyway, we were doing that, and eventually we filed a lawsuit. I didn't really expect the outcome. I thought we were going to be able to do some Sankirtan on State Street or something. But the way it came through was that the whole of Chicago was open. Every sidewalk, every place. The city of Chicago every place the city of Chicago owned, we could go to. They said to me, "You all can't go anywhere in Chicago, even the airport." Oh yeah, Sri Govinda said, that sounds really good. So it was the court case. The name, it was Robert Weinberg versus Richard J. Daley in the city of Chicago. It was a landmark case. So after that, I wrote a letter to every one of the temples saying that we opened Chicago, and this is, and these glasses are, I'm sorry. This is all right. You can all do the airports legally. So the book distribution began legally in all the airports in America. And I sent the other temples copies of the suit so they could present it. The decision was so conclusive that it applied to the whole country. So that's how, Hare Krishna. So that's how Kishore arranged for Srila Prabhupada's books to be distributed in O'Hare and in all airports. And they were so merciful, Kishore, to bring us all together. We had such a dynamic crew of devotees. Chicago Temple was unique because we'd have all these other groups. We'd have all the other devotees coming through. Radha Damodar. Then when Tripurari Maharaj's party came, we had like 50 brahmacharis. The temple was packed. Kirtans were through the wall. Krishna sent Gopati and Apurva to be our cooks. I mean, Prashadam, devotees would come from other temples and they couldn't believe what they were eating. I mean, even Ekadasi, we had, because Kishore gave us a milk truck. We had a milk truck, and we drive the milk truck to the milk distribution center, and they had milk outdated by a day, 2 days, maybe 3 days, but it was still good. So we had all this curd. We had so much curd. On Ekadasi, we had curd steaks like that thick with tomato chutney on them. And the prasadam was just really incredible. So that's basically how we were all called by Kishore Kishore. We were called here to serve Prabhupada, their most dear devotee, the beloved, pure devotee. And we were getting such a taste internally from distributing books that it was infectious. Other devotees, even pujaris, or everybody wanted to go out and experience what we were experiencing because we came back so fired up and so bright and blissful. And Kalki Prabhu was talking this morning about hearing and chanting and how important that was. And that's what gave us our power. We would chant such intense japa in the morning. We get up early. Kishore Mangalartik in those days was 4:15. We had it so early because we wanted to get out to the airport as early as possible. And, we would chant our japa, and driving to the airport was a power drive. Because we would just read constantly, real intensely. Everybody would take turns reading. And you get out to the airport and you're just ready to go, man. Yahoo! 20 Hare Krishnas just burst in. And we had full run of the airport. Krishna gave us the whole airport, And we just cleaned up every day. And coming back from the airport also. We have kirtan, powerful kirtans, Then we come back, jump in the shower, and then come down, more kirtan. So it was a really, really, really amazing time. And, and then the Jambavan was driving the truck for the BBT. It was a 40-foot semi-trailer. And he would deliver books to different temples in that book, and in that truck. And it was a 40-foot trailer, but 3/4 of the trailer was for Chicago. And who was talking about, I think Siki was talking about, we would load the books in the swimming pool. We had a swimming pool. We stored the Roth cart wheels in there and different things. And But then we decided to move the book storage down in the basement. And what it was is the old Emerson Temple was an old YMCA building, and it used to be heated with coal. So they had those openings on the street level, you know? They'd shovel the coal in. Yeah, so we got some rollers, and we put the rollers through there, and they went down into the book room, and John Bavon would pull up, and we'd have a whole line of devotees just books rolling down. And we had a screened off area, and we had all Prabhupada's books in there. And the amazing thing is, Prabhu, is that we were so fortunate that as the books came hot off the press, we'd rip open that box and just read it right there in the book room on top of all the books. We'd read that book, and it was so ecstatic, you know, to have that opportunity to have those books. So, you know, no one's ever seen them before. And then the excitement to distribute them was just, everybody was so fired up, you know. We couldn't wait to get to the airport. And amazing things would happen on Sankirtan. You would meet so many nice people. Of course, you met miserable people, mean people, jerks, but they were born that way. They couldn't help it, you know. And but we met so many nice people. Some devotees would complain to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, they're throwing your books in the garbage. And Prabhupada said, what is so surprising? They throw their own babies in the garbage, Prabhupada said. So Prabhupada did not want to hear any criticism of his book distributors. He considered us his book warriors. And that, to me, that was a glorious thing to be called that by Srila Prabhupada. And I come from a Marine Corps family, so when Prabhupada said that, I was like so happy. And yeah, so one day I was out there with Magendra, and Johnny Cash, very famous. You all know Johnny Cash? Everybody knows Johnny. He came through the airport, and Magendra was standing right next to me, and I approached him. I said, Mr. Cash, we're handing out these books today from our spiritual master. And he looked at the Bhagavatam. I think it was first canto, I remember. And he said, he blew my mind. He said, I know your master's books. They're very beautiful. I was like, wow. I was in ecstasy, you know. He said he had a book. So I said, oh, Mr. Cash, and I pulled out 3 Chaitanya Charitamritas, fresh off the press. You know, Prabhupada, you know, we all know the story how Prabhupada wanted those books printed. What was it, 17 days or something? The Rameshwar told him, he said, it would take a year to print all those volumes. Prabhupada said, no. No. And they printed them. It was a miracle. Prabhupada actually stayed in L.A. to help them with the Bengali, because they didn't know Bengali very well. And anyway, Mr. Cash was so kind. He took those 3 Chaitanya Charitamritas and he was looking through them really slow. And then he started walking. So me and Magendra Prabhu, we just followed him. And he went down the escalator to the baggage claim. And we went down with him. And then he looked through them. And then he pulls his hand in his pocket and he pulls out 2 20s. He goes, is that okay? Oh, yes, Mr. Cash. Thank you so much, you know. And off he went with 3 Chaitanya Charitamritas. So what a special soul, you know. And then one day O.J. Simpson came through. I was distributing a book to somebody, and I look, and there goes O.J. It's like, whoa, that was O.J. Simpson. And I finished up selling the book really fast. And I followed him down towards International, remember? International Terminal. And there was a bookstore there, magazine store. And he went in there. So I'm standing there, and we're not supposed to go in those stores, you know. They get upset if you go in the stores. So it was really crowded that day. And he's in there, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll wait till he comes out. He's going to go to International. And then I'm thinking, what if he comes out? He's really fast, OJ. What if I don't get him? So I went in the store. I said, I'm going to chance this, you know, and hopefully the lady, you know, Krishna, please don't let her see me, you know. So I approached OJ. I said, OJ, I said, we're handing out these books. He goes, well, what is it? I said, it's a book on meditation, you know. and higher consciousness. He said, oh, that's nice. He goes, I know people who are into this. He goes, you want something for it? It's really beautiful. I said, yeah, we get donations. And he reached in, he pulled out $10. He said, is that okay? I said, yeah. $10 was a nice donation in those days, you know. And off he went with Bhagavad Gita, with Prabhupada's Gita in his football hand, you know. And that was, so many amazing things happened on Sankirtan. And Krishna always arranged for very nice people to come through. And I would give out a book for if someone gave me $1, because I knew I was going to get 20 or 30 or 50 from somebody else. And we were very all fortunate. So anybody want to add in something? Gora, you had something to say?
Hey, Trana Karta, bro.
Who said that? Oh, Shri Govinda.
Yeah, Sri Govinda.
Oh, Maharaj.
Can you tell us about the Christmas marathon that we did?
About what?
The Christmas marathon.
Wow. The Christmas marathon was so powerful. All the devotees were fired up. We would go out from... Oh, sorry. We would go out after, Manasuda and I especially, but most devotees would go out around 6 or 7 in the morning, but we'd go out right after Mangalartik. And, you know, it was, and we'd stay out till it was dark. It's sometimes till midnight. Closer to Christmas it got, the later we would stay out. And the amount of books we were doing was staggering. The amount of Lakshmi Krishna was allowing us to collect was staggering. And it supported so many programs. It supported, you know, we half went to the BBT, half went to India for Vrindavan and Mayapur. That was Prabhupada's order to do that. So the Christmas marathons were really intense. I mean, you can read the book because I can't tell everything right now. And it was just, you know, it was so transcendentally powerful to surrender to Prabhupada's book distribution because it wasn't a material activity. You had to be completely focused on Krishna while you were distributing to the person. And you had to be aggressive. If you were not aggressive, in Chicago especially, people would run you right over. So you had to say, you know, you stop the people. And I had a thing where I would stop somebody. I would say, sir, where are you coming from? In Italian, I immediately put the book in their hand. Here, we're handing these out today. And, well, what is it? Well, it's a book on, you know, meditation and stuff. And then I would open the book to anywhere, and I would read a verse. And a person most of the time didn't understand the verse, you know, and I'd read the verse, close the book, and say, we're getting donations, and make it real short. And I'm like, okay, because the books are so attractive. Everybody would give something, you know. You give a book, give a buck, couple bucks, give 20, give 50, and off they went. And it was day after day. Actually, the Christmas marathon started in October. And it went all the way through Thanksgiving and all the way through Christmas. So it was really powerful. One time, I'll tell one more person. I approached Bob Marley. You know Bob Marley, very famous. I didn't know reggae because I became a devotee. I was really young. I never even heard of reggae. And I approached him. And I gave him a Bhagavatam. And I was preaching the basic, he told me I'm a musician, I'm going to LA to do a concert. And I gave him the Bhagavatam, and I was preaching to him the basic philosophy. And he had tears, not because of me, because of Prabhupada. He had tears coming out of his eyes, because I was preaching to him about the holy name and how God is in everyone's heart. You know, just simple, basic stuff. And I was thinking, this person is like really special, you know? He had his long dreadlocks. And so he took the books, 3 Bhagavatams, gave me like $50, and off he went. And Manasuda Prabhu, he saw, and he goes, Trana, he came up to me, and he goes, Trana, you know what that was? I said, Manu, he is a musician going to LA, but I'll tell you, this guy's really special. He goes, Trana, that's Bob Marley, man. He's really famous. I said, I didn't know who he was. And then, like a couple days later, Manu and I went out to the airport again, like right after Mangalarti, and it was a little bit slow, so we sat in a chair for a couple minutes, and there was a Chicago Sun-Times on the chair next to Manu, and he grabbed it and he opened it up. And there's a paragraph about that big, how Bob Marley did a concert in Los Angeles, and George Harrison of the Beatles was in the front row enjoying the concert. And then he met Bob Marley after the concert, and I always wondered if, you know, Bob Marley told him about the books. So that was like really, you know, really satisfying. And then I got a call after this book came out. Some devotees in Jamaica got this book and read it. And they called me. Somebody gave them my number, I don't know. And they said, Karta, we want to fly you to Jamaica so you could tell us about Bob Marley. And I was like, I can only tell you what's in the book. But after I left Chicago in 1979, 80, I got married and had beautiful Vaishnav children Prabhupada gave me. But I listened to Bob Marley and I was going, God, no wonder he was so far out. Because all his songs are practically God conscious, you know. And so that was a wonderful experience. Hare Krishna. Somebody else jump in. Oh, Shri Govinda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Maharaj.
Oh, okay. Father Karta, I have another question. I'm wondering, there was you, Manasuta, Devananda Pandit, and who else? I remember at Christmas time, I guess close to Christmas, we did hotel rooms. And there was one for ladies and one for men, I think, and we kept the books there. I forget.
Yeah, we had a hotel room right across from the airport. It was the O'Hare Hotel, right? And devotees, I never wanted to stay in hotels. I don't like hotels. But I would go back to the temple. But devotees would stay in the hotel, so they were right there, you know, in Marathon. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. The devotees were so surrendered to Prabhupada. We were all, you know, by Kishori's grace, we fell in love with the holy names by Prabhupada's mercy. And Kishori were just blessing us in such a powerful way. I mean, I could tell you, if I told you some of the experiences I had with Kishori, you'd think I was sitting here and I'm a sahaja, so I won't say anything. But it was Kishori was shedding their mercy into the heart of all these wonderful Vaishnavas who came to surrender to Prabhupada. So please, somebody.
Could Sri Govinda speak about some of his experiences?
I spoke a bit yesterday about it, and basically, I was a manager of a pretty large temple, and I did go out a few times, but I wasn't very good at it. So basically, my thinking was to give as much facility as possible to the book distributors, and because Prabhupada repeatedly told me in his letters that book distribution is number one, and everybody who's going on book distribution, they're like the point men of our mission. And we should, do everything we can to support them. And, of course, like to support them meant to have a nice, beautiful temple running. And that required manpower also. So everybody was like together contributing, the whole thrust was towards book distribution. Even though there was beautiful deity worship. And like Prabhupada said that Kishore, we don't understand how that works, but they were blessing in so many ways, and it didn't really occur to me that it must be Kishore who arranged the whole thing with getting the legalities cleared and opened up and all that. It was, it was the deity participating in the pastimes of their great servant, their great devotee, Prabhupada. And, based on that kind of participation, everybody in the temple felt, a great, energy and joy. It emanated from the distributors, but everybody was into it. In the mornings, we would talk about book distribution, and everybody was so happy and fired up because, yes, one man had to cook the prasadam for the devotees. One man had to take care of the deities. One man had to take care of Tulsi. One lady had to take care of Tulsi Devi so that she would be in beautiful condition to give her blessings to the book distributors. And I don't know. It was an amazing experience always, and reinforced, again and again by Srila Prabhupada, directly telling us, do these books. This is what I want the most. And I'm trying to remember exactly what he said in a few of the letters, but his idea was that these men are the soldiers, and as your position is to do everything to facilitate them, and that's what they did. That's what we did in the temple, and so much of the money went to Prabhupada's book fund, the BBT, and he'd like that even if we collected extra, that we try to send extra monies to his BBT fund. So we utilized the money that came in as best we could to run the temple, but at the same time, we always tried to give extra monies to the book fund. And the devotees who were distributing at the airport, they were basically they supported the temple. The whole temple ran in a very dynamic way, and so many devotees were there, so many new people coming, but it was all based on the underlying principle of book distribution, and practically that underlying principle it manifested in the maintenance of the whole temple. The money just came in amazing ways. It just, I forget how much, but it was like thousands of dollars, maybe even in one day, right, Karta, I think?
Huh?
Right, Karta?
Yeah, I used to do the treasury, so I remember counting the money, and we were averaging like $2,000 a day, which is probably, $11,000 in today's money a day, just from book distribution. So you could have thought just imagine, instead of sending that money to India, we could have built a very nice big temple for ourselves. But we just stayed in that YMCA with the flooding of the maggot water and and all those other things, and just happy to sell those books. So
Sripurari Maharaj asked Prabhupada in a letter. It's a letter where I believe where Prabhupada called him the incarnation of book distribution, that he should take charge and distribute as many books as possible. When Sripurari Maharaj asked him, is book distribution, the money we get from book distribution, could finance all other projects within the movement? And Prabhupada said yes. Book distribution can finance and support all other projects in our movement. So I think that maybe we got away from that at some point because, Prabhupada wanted, some of his last instructions were to establish the farms and to take care of the devotees that we've already made. And I think one of the problems was that they would just go out and collect money and collect money and collect money without distributing books, and that was a mistake because they could have had so many vans full, and people, it would have attracted devotees to come to the farms, right? And if you wanted to go out and do books, you hop in the van and go, and the money come back and support the farm communities. But they kind of got out of that, but that's another chapter something in another book. But Gora Prabhu.
one last thing, and I'll give it to you. Maybe. I just want to personally say thank you to Sri Govindai. I wasn't able to participate in yesterday's session because I had to prepare that thing in the evening. So what could I do? I was lamenting to miss all those devotees, but I don't know if you remember me, Sri Govinda, but anyway, I'm that guy who showed
What's
up.
your name, bro?
Siki Mahit. I was Bhakta Nate.
Of course I remember you. I was going to say that, it was so important that the black devotees who joined, we started doing some Sankirtan there, and somehow or other, I think first, remember Ananta Devi, she came, and then Ramakeli Prabhu came. And then,
I think.
I think you came after that, I think.
I came out of Purdue. I showed up on the Sunday feast, and you were talking to me, and you say, I think you need to visit for a while. You don't know anything. And I said, well, I just drove 200 miles from Purdue University, and they told me to come, and now you're telling me to visit? And so then he says, Rama Kelly, well, he's Bhakta Rodney at the time. Okay, take him to the kitchen so he can wash some pots.
I got the milk truck and I went to the south side with Siki and got his stuff, whatever he wanted to bring, and Ramakeli, and moved him in the temple.
I wanted to say, but actually, like myself, this Back to Godhead magazine was the first contact with Krishna consciousness. And just like you, I mean, I was a 16-year-old boy, and I was 14, 15, brother, same thing, looking, can't find any answers. And I feel like this, what happened, the sequence was, but it was one evening, because my brother and I would go on the roof of our house and just look at the stars. And go, where does it all end? Why can't we know anything? Nobody knows. And he was a university student, and he would travel from Gary to Chicago on the train, and he bumped into the Harinam party. Surprisingly enough, he didn't freak out because, they're like Martians. So he bought a Back to Godhead magazine, and he brought it home to me, and he says, you won't believe it? Read this. And I read it. I was like 1971 probably, sometime around there. I said, you got to get more books. At that time, they were still selling Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita in the bookstore, and he brought that home. So, the Back to Godhead magazine made me a devotee, so I guess that's why I distributed Back to Godheads mostly. So, but anyway, it was a really wonderful time. I remember Sri Govinda there. Of everyone, it was like you mentioned before. It was just such a, I felt like we were just, we're warriors going to take over the world for Prabhupada. I don't know how that was going to manifest, but I was very happy to be a part of it. And my experience of seeing the devotees, I was like, my God, whatever they're doing, I'm just going to do it, even though I didn't understand most of it in the beginning. And maybe I'm one of the few devotees. I didn't like the prasadam. I wasn't accustomed to the flavors and all. So
It's like I said.
I like it now, though.
We all became devotees from book distribution.
Yeah, from that Back to Godhead magazine, the philosophy, just reading the book, reading. Somehow or another, I got the understanding you have to move in the temple. It was very clear. You have to move in the temple, otherwise you can't do it. So then I just picked up the phone. I said, hey, I want to be a devotee. What do you have to do? As I mentioned, Yadubar.
I have Siki's interview in this book.
Yeah, you go. Just come to the temple. I said, okay. And he hangs the phone up. That was it. I go, okay, that means move in. So, anyway, Hare Krishna.
It was so satisfying doing books because, people are on their path back home, back to Godhead. And O'Hare was such a special place because books are being shot all over the world. Who knows where they went? Russia, Arab countries, God only knows where these books went. And it was so satisfying to give people books who appreciated the books, right? Like I was out doing a book out at the airport, and I distributed this kid a book. It was like in the morning, and he was such a nice kid, and he really appreciated the book. And, and he went on his way. So that night when I went back to the temple, devotees were talking to him in the front hallway. He went to the temple. And they asked him, where did you get the book? And I just came walking in the door from Sankirtan. He goes, from that guy. I was like, well, it's just so satisfying to bring people to Krishna, and we were just so fortunate to be Prabhupada's warriors. We would do it all over again. If somebody said, if you can go back in time and live in the heavenly planets and enjoy like anything, Or sleep on the floor in Evanston. What would you do? Sleep on the floor in Evanston and serve Prabhupada. Forget the heavenly planets, because we were getting so much mercy in our hearts. It was internal. The internal Krishna consciousness at that time was overwhelming. The mercy we got from Prabhupada and book distribution was overwhelming. Overwhelming. We were so bright, and and Prabhupada was proud of it. Sometimes I think it was a Catholic priest that said, "Your disciples are so bright-faced," and Prabhupada would mention that in his lectures and stuff, and he was very proud of that. So Hare Krishna. Yes, Bala.
In the idea that each book, each Back to Godhead, was like a powerful seed that was being like implanted in so many different people and being brought all over the world and acting in ways that we can't even understand or imagine. And it's like that now. There are millions of books as a result of Prabhupada's amazing energy. There are millions of books and Back to Godheads all over, and they're sitting there, starting to grow and move into people's hearts. We can't, for us, it's just too much. We're too small. We can't conceive of how massive and miraculous it is. The power of the books that Prabhupada gave us. It's to just get a little sense of it. You hear from Srila Prabhupada about the importance that he's placing on it. We maybe get a 1/10,000th of a sense of it, but it's so powerful. That sense is so powerful that it's enough to take over your life. And it's enough that, like Trana is saying, we're going to do that again. And we're going to do it again and again with Srila Prabhupada. Who knows where, who knows how. But, my feeling has always been, and my hope has always been, that I'll be able to render some service to Srila Prabhupada, in my next life, and the next life, and the next life. And maybe someday he'll like me to go to his world. But, our opportunity is there. And particularly it was amazing that in those years, Prabhupada had a particular transcendental power and experience where things were just flooded with Prabhupada's energy. The temples were filled with Prabhupada's presence. And we were able to do things that, just otherwise couldn't possibly have been done. I mean, defeating the city of Chicago in court. Come on, it's like impossible. But it was all set up and arranged by the potency of Srila Prabhupada. And that potency of Srila Prabhupada, was so powerful and amazing that it brought, it drew Krishna to come in the form of Kishore Kishori, in that amazing form, to convey the blessings and also reinforce the determination of the book distributors and give everybody a sense of participation in a grand scheme that was developed in the heart of our beloved Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada.
Right.
Jai.
People.
Did you want to speak first? Okay. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I was asked to go out to the Christmas Marathon in 1975, and we would facilitate the devotees with books. And we have those carts like we have downstairs. We'd put like 16 boxes on each cart. And we had a van, and miraculously it never got broken into, although we had many, many boxes of books. But I remember, some devotees might remember it, but in LaGuardia Airport in 1975, the second week of December, a bomb went off and killed 11 people. So they started expanding the security. Do you remember they used to, they put lockers underneath the escalators in the basement, and we would put the books in there for the devotees and give them a key, and then they could pick up the books anytime they wanted. Because my friend Bhakta Tim and I would alternate one day I would go out and one day he'd go out. And then we would facilitate the devotees. We did it for 4 years till about 1980. But I don't know, does anybody remember the explosion in LaGuardia in 1975?
Anybody remember what?
The explosion of the bomb that went off at LaGuardia and killed 11 people. So that was my first experience with the Christmas Marathon. And the security got more and more intense. And as you can see today, it's nothing like what they were describing before. There was no security. You could go anywhere you wanted in the airport. But then it became tighter and tighter and tighter. So those are the things that I remember out there. And from time to time, I would hear about devotees.
Bhakta Tim and Jitendriya were invaluable. When they would bring books around, they had a cart like this long with one of the poles come up and you can push it, stacked with books. And they would go from one side of the airport to the other, supplying ammo to all the devotees. So we didn't have to go down the escalator, go to the locker, and waste our time. You know, we didn't want to waste any time on book distribution, just like we realized that we wanted to sell the books as fast as possible. We didn't want to stand there and talk to people and preach to them. Once in a while, if someone was really special and they asked, like Bob Marley, but otherwise we'd sell the book fast and go. But Jitendriya and Bhakta Tim did these devotees, they should be worshipped because they are really great souls and they sacrificed their lives for Prabhupada because they were harassed by workers and different people. They were harassed and they took a lot of punishment, but they got a lot of mercy. And I'll tell one story. It's in the book, but I'll tell it anyway because it's really far out. They used to bring prasadam for us. You know, we had one of those orange igloos, like full of khichdi. We had chapatis on top, and then we had halava, and what else? You know, a couple of preparations, and we'd all go down. There's a tunnel that went from the airport to the parking lot. So we'd all go down there, and we'd sit against the wall on the floor, and Jitendriya or Bhakta Tim would come and be serving us all prashad. O'Hare's really busy, man. There's people be walking by going, what the heck? I mean, so one time, Bhakta Tim was setting up for us. We weren't down there yet. He's setting up prashadam, and a guy, Chakri, and a guy comes walking by, a businessman, a Rolex kind of guy, you know, a wealthy guy, you know. He's got a Rolex, and he stops and he looks at Bhakta Tim. He said, hey, how much for the tacos? Because he saw the chapatis. So Bhakta Tim goes, 2 for $3. So the guy says, okay, give me 2, right? So Bhakta Tim puts the sabji in there, and he didn't put it was blueberry halva. He didn't put any halva, and the guy goes, hey, how about the meat? Tim's like, oh yeah, okay. Tim's thinking in his mind, this guy's going to walk away and take a bite and come back here and like kick my butt or something, you know? So Tim says the guy's walking away. He takes a bite and he stops and he looks back at Bhakta Tim and he goes, and keeps walking. So we had so many amazing experiences at O'Hare. It's amazing time. It will never be repeated. I mean, look at that time that Lord Krishna sent Prabhupada in the midst of the Vietnam War, of everybody leaving their family, going to the streets, the hippies, and miracles happened. You know, like Malati and Shamasunder. Where's Malati? It's another example that they were in Haight-Ashbury and they couldn't pay their rent. And they came out one morning out of the apartment for to go to the temple, I guess. They lived in an apartment, right? And they came out and there were $100 bills blown down the street. And Krishna just would do amazing things like that. Just amazing things.
Prabhu, do you remember the story? I think it's in your book. It's about how Bhakta Tim came along with his cart and he honked his horn. He had a horn on his cart. And there was a man that was dying.
Oh, yeah, that's in the book, yeah.
Tell that one?
Sure, I get. No one will buy my book then if I tell all the stories. No.
Nah, they'll just get hate, man.
Dr. Tim was pushing the cart, and he was by International Terminal when this heavy-set businessman just, boom, fell on the ground. He's having a heart attack, and he's turning purple, and O'Hare's so big, there's a crowd of people around him just watching, right? And Dr. Tim goes, man, I got to do something, So he bursts through the crowd, and he goes up to the guy, and Dr. Tim's chanting the holy names in his ear. He's chanting, and a cop came and goes, hey, you, Krishna, get out of here. And Tim goes, no, I'm not moving. And he kept chanting to the guy, and the guy died. The guy died. Can you imagine the mercy? Can you imagine the mercy? This is the mercy of Prabhupada, right? Through the devotees, he's shedding his mercy through the whole planet. When Prabhupada put his foot on Boston Harbor, when he got off the Jaladuta, the whole world was changing, right? Vegetarianism was becoming, famous, or people were finally hearing about it, because when we were kids, our parents thought if we didn't eat meat, we were going to die. But Krishna is just amazing. What can I say? I mean, it was an amazing time. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the whole hippie revolution, all that thing, was a result of the change in consciousness that came about by the presence of Srila Prabhupada. We could, like in Chicago, I can remember, Prabhupada's on his way, he was like, he's going to come in 2 weeks or something. But as he approaches, coming closer and closer from India to the West, you feel a tangible difference. I mean, the potency of the pure Vaishnava is, we can't imagine what it is. But he came in and, brought about a transformation in consciousness, which enabled people to begin to come to Krishna consciousness, to come to some kind of realization about what life is for. And we can understand from the predictions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, the wave that Prabhupada set into motion is, it's just beginning. It may have receded a little bit, but it's only in the early stages, because those millions of books will fructify. I feel like that. They'll fructify, and a transformation will come about as a result of the potency of Srila Prabhupada that lives and sits in, because of Trana Karta Prabhu and the other devotees who did so much book distribution, they're there in so many people's houses. Who knows how they're being looked at, read, absorbed, thought about? We have such great chance to be the ones who are able to step in and fulfill the will of Srila Prabhupada in terms of helping people and giving them books. Prabhupada just, it was going to happen, no doubt. But somehow or other, there was a few of us who, stumbled into temples and were just, zapped by Prabhupada's potency. And we were able to be with Prabhupada in on a level of devotion and dedication. However little we could perceive it and experience it, it was a real thing, and it was a thing that not only transformed us in this lifetime, but transformed our existence. They're just like it's unimaginable. We can't conceive of how it all happened, and then yet beyond this temporary material world, beyond this temporary material universe, there's a whole world of spiritual existence. There's Prabhupada's land. There's Kishore's land. And they've come to give it to us. And the ones who are able to be instruments in that, in that giving are so blessed and so fortunate and so auspicious. So like Trana said, everybody who participated in that, we have some heart necessity to honor them. And, above even honoring, we have some feeling of, naturally, everybody has some feeling of love and affection for those who did that, whether we shared with it or not. It's still there in a very tangible way. When I talk to my friends from that time, it's different than just talking to someone that I've met in the last couple of years. It's a whole different experience. That's still there and still alive and like burning in our hearts by the grace of Srila Prabhupada.
I'd like to make reference to the Bhagavatam class that was given by Kalki Prabhu this morning. He made the point that our foundation for distributing books was, if you don't read Srila Prabhupada's books, you won't have the foundation to distribute them. And that reminded me of Siddhanta Prabhu's interview with in the Prabhupada Memories, and Tripurari Maharaj mentioning that our distribution of Prabhupada's books comes as a result of our cultivation of reading those books. That when we really come to love Prabhupada's books, a sign of that relishing those books is that we just can't help to want to get out the door and give these books to others. So if we find that we're not so fired up to distribute books, then maybe we need to immerse ourselves more deeply in those books so that we'll be inspired to want to distribute them. And Romapad Maharaj made the comment that we must acknowledge the gift and repay it, and that one who is an ingrate is a condemned person. So this is reminding me, I don't know if this is in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam or if it was a letter from Prabhupada, but he was saying, when the spiritual master gives Krishna to the disciple can never repay the spiritual master for what he has given. But Prabhupada said, but if you want to try, then preach vigorously, just as I am doing. That was a very famous quote, I remember. So I just had a couple of quick stories from other God brothers, and if there's a minute, I can say something about myself. And that is, I asked Pragosh Prabhu, I met him at the Rath Yatra 3 years ago in New York, and I said, who is one of the nicer celebrities that you met, influential people that you distributed a book to? And he said, well, one time when I was at the airport, I saw Charlton Heston. If anyone knows, he's a famous...
I got his interview.
Oh, okay, it's in your book too. Everyone must get... You probably only have a few copies
It's a great
left.
story.
Yes. So the way Pragosh told me is he said he was out that day especially distributing Life Comes from Life, which, as we all know, is Prabhupada's attack on materialistic scientists and how they try to scam us and cheat us. So he went up to Charlton Heston and he said, excuse me, Mr. Heston? And he said, yes. And he said, I have a gift for you. And he gave him a Life Comes from Life. And Charlton Heston was very pleased, gracious in receiving.
He looked at Life Comes from Life and he said, yes, it does.
Ah, okay. and then he said, you know, when I was a young boy, my mom dressed me up in my best suit, and my brothers and sisters all in our best Sunday clothing, and we all went to watch you as Ben-Hur at the movie theater. And Charlton Heston became, very grateful that he was being remembered in this way. And he said, oh, thank you very much. And then,
do you know where our golf ball is? It's at the far end of the store, and then adjacent to that golf ball,
a disruptive person came up during this transaction and said, oh, don't listen to him. He's just a Hare Krishna. He's a member of some cult. And Charlton Heston said to the guy, I don't remember inviting you.
I don't remember inviting you into the conversation.
I don't remember inviting you to this conversation. Yes.
Charlton Heston was really a great actor, wasn't he? He was one of my favorite when I was a kid. That movie is still classic.
And then I asked Vaisheshika Prabhu about one of his encounters. And he said him and Bopadev were in the airport together, and Bopadev said to him, hey, that's Mick Jagger and his wife. But Bopadev had to keep going, and Vaish said, oh, all right, I'm going to wait for him. Because they went in, Bianca Jagger, his wife at the time, and Mick went into a little boutique at the airport, little kiosk. And so Vaish waited outside for about 15 minutes or so, and they both came out. And Vaish said, Mick, I have a gift for you. And he was offering him a Bhagavad Gita, and Mick Jagger went, don't bore me. And he kept going, and his wife stayed behind. She said, "Oh, don't mind him. He's always like that." She said, "What's the book?" And he showed her the paintings, etc. And Bianca gave him a $20 donation. So yes, the women can be the better half in a relationship. In my own case, I'm embarrassed to say that when I came, I just met the devotees a couple of weeks before. They brought me here, and I remember Srila Prabhupada pouring a white liquid, I didn't know what it was, over these little golden men, which were Gornitai deities. Prabhupada was doing the Abhishek ceremony. I had no idea what was going on at the time. But I'm embarrassed to say that in the evening, when the devotees were getting ready to go to bed at 9 o'clock, I'd sneak out with my electric guitar and head out to the south side and the east side of Chicago looking for different musicians to play with, because I was a big fan of the Chicago blues. Anyway, after Prabhupada left, I went out, ended up playing in a couple of bands. My band leader had played with Jimi Hendrix, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, etc. And he was going through the Detroit airport. And he met a devotee. Maybe it was Panchatattva Prabhu, who I tried to invite here, but I didn't reach him. And that devotee, and my band leader, Jimmy Mays, said to the devotee, "Oh, I got a boy in my band. He's into Krishna." And so the devotee gave him an Ancha Leela Volume 5, the topmost Mahabhava experience of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and a reservoir of pleasure, and said, "Give this to your guitar player." So when he came back and to Chicago and saw me, I just finished reading Jimi Hendrix's biography, which ended on a tragic note, and I offered it to him as a gift. And he distributed to me an Ancha Leela Volume 5. And he said, "I met one of your people, one of your Krishna friends in the airport." And I took it as an omen that Krishna's calling me back to his lotus feet. I can't hide out here in the material world any longer. And I didn't like smelling like a cigarette. I wasn't smoking, but when you're working in the bars, you end up. So it was interesting that one of my own band members distributed Prabhupada's book to me, which inspired me to move into the Chicago temple in the Christmas Marathon 75.
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Very nice, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Time is it?
5 minutes. till
Before I
one.
forget, I want to take an opportunity to invite Naikatma Prabhu to Kishore Kishore Mandir, his old home. Where is Naikatma? Haribo. Nice to see you, Prabhu. Naikatma is one of my dearest friends, dearest godbrothers, and we did books side by side for years in O'Hare. Yes. Naikatma, please say something.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Jai Kishore Kishori Ki Jai. Oh, it's coming back here and seeing all of you wonderful Vaishnavas and seeing the deities brings back a lot of memories. The fondest, of course, being out in Ohari Airport and some of the marathons that we used to have out there. They were quite amazing. All-nighters that you stay at the hotel Airport Hilton overnight so you can catch the boys in the morning. But yeah, there were a lot of wonderful experiences here. And I remember when we first got this building here, I remember carrying their lordships, Kishore in particular, through those doors coming from the old building over in Evanston and bringing them in here. And I remember Tamal Krishna Maharaj was here with all the other Vaishnavas, and there was so much work going on, but it was really a special experience to bring them to their new home. And it looks so wonderful. It's such a wonderful energy, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hare Krishna. I remember Uttama Shloka and I were driving around looking for a new temple because the old one, I was really sad. I thought we could fix it up and remodel it and keep it because Prabhupada was really happy when we paid it off, and he liked that building. He said 3 things in my initiation letter that he saw. He liked how clean we kept the temple. He liked the balconies. We had balconies like that. And he said, this is the part devotees loved. He said, I'm thinking your kirtan hall is better than Los Angeles. So that was really sweet, that letter from Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Anuttama Prabhu, would you like to say something? You're the voice of ISKCON.
Hare Krishna. I just distributed in Chicago a couple times as a visitor, but I distributed books with my Prabhu in Denver airport for years. I was just thinking to speak a little bit about some of those people that we met. And just a couple people come to my mind. I remember one day there was a guy was standing in front of the United terminal. This guy was coming down the hallway. His arm was in a sling, and I think he had a bandage all around his head. And he was all cut up and scraped, and he was like on a crutch. He was a mess. And I thought, wow, this guy needs Prabhupada's books. I thought he must have fallen off a mountain or something. And he actually had fallen off a mountain.
Wow.
I approached him, and he'd been like backpacking with a friend, and the 2 of them fell. His one friend died, and he was left like on the side of the mountain overnight, like not knowing if they were going to rescue him or not. And somehow he told me this whole story now that they rescued him, and I'm just like thinking, wow, I'm going to give him 2 books. No, I'm going to give him 3 books. No, I'm giving him every book in my bag. And I explained to him, yeah, you're going to love this because, the material world's such a terrible place, and this is why we're here, and the soul and Krishna. And he said, I don't want that book. I was like, people tell you that all day long, but from this guy, I was shell-shocked. I couldn't believe he said that. And I said, why not? He said, well, when I was laying on the side of that mountain, not knowing if my friend had lived or not knowing if they were going to rescue me or not. But as I looked off in the distance, I saw the most beautiful sunset I'd ever seen. And I was thinking, just see the power of the material energy. Because this guy, like his friend, he didn't know his friend was dead yet, but his friend died. He was a total wreck. Still, he didn't want spiritual knowledge. He's hanging out, holding out to somehow he's still going to enjoy the material world. But then I remember another guy I met coming out of the same concourse and presented the Bhagavad Gita. I remember him telling me he was a truck driver. We used to meet so many truck drivers because they'd have to fly to pick up a rig someplace. And he had just like gone home, and his wife had left him and taken off with his kids. And he was a mess. And when I presented the book to him and told him about it, he was just so grateful. It was like a whole new chapter. So we all met thousands of people like that. But it really was like Prabhupada explained to us, we're giving people that chance. They've been wandering around the material world for so many years, and we can't twist anybody's arm to take Krishna like the guy that fell off the mountain. He was determined, I'm going to still enjoy this world. I don't want that book. But I remember one other thing. I was at Continental Air Terminal, standing there, and one day just this blood-curdling scream went out. And everybody's looking around like, where's it? Like, it was kind of like in the Bhagavatam, like the demigods, has the universe come to an end? And just people screaming and screaming and looking at where's that coming from? And there was an escalator right there, and some little girl had got her foot caught in the escalator. So I don't think she was hurt, but her foot was stuck, and she's screaming, and then people realized where it is. The whole place stopped. It was like a movie scene or something, like in the theater. Everybody just stopped. Like, am I safe? Am I next? Am I going to get killed? What's going on? Maybe the world's over. Oh my God, what's happening here? And for like about 10, 15 seconds, it was like frozen in time. And then people's attention kind of went over. Okay, it's coming from there. Okay, it's a little girl. Okay, she's just in the escalator. Okay, there's people helping her. Everything's okay. Okay, keep going. And it was just this bizarre experience of the whole material. Who's next? And this group of people, who's next? They're all thinking, maybe this is my time, and they're shocked by it. But then it's like, no, I have more time. go back to my Maya. It was like, whoa, we got to distribute these books. This is some crazy planet we're living on, and we really got to give them Prabhupada's mercy.
Thank you, Anutama.
This is real quick. Hare Krishna. Maybe you devotees were in the airport when this happened. So when we would distribute books, we would think this is this person's last opportunity to get Krishna consciousness. So maybe you were in the airport, the devotees that distributed books, people were rushing for their flight. They got on the flight, the plane crashed. Were you at the airport at that time?
When the plane crashed?
Yeah.
The one that Pundarik's parents were on?
I'm not sure. I know there were famous
The American
people.
Airlines flight, the engine fell off and the plane came down.
Kalki Prabhu, you remember that? So the devotees were like reminiscing this mercy, the mercy.
That's a whole story I put in my book because it's a powerful story. Jai Kishore Kishore Ki. Before we end, Gopasundari Mata, my editor and dear friend, has put a video together so we can watch that, and then I guess that'll be the end of our time. Are you ready to show it? Yeah. Okay. All right, Subal.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Vivo. Shishikishore Kishore ki jai. Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Key.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everybody. So I have some few announcements for all of you. Lunch is going to be served right now. So take a very good lunch. Be ready for Sankirtan today, Harinam Sankirtan in Chicago, downtown Chicago. So we're going to have a bus that is coming, is arriving here at 4, and we're going to leave somewhere around 4:45. So just be aware and then, get yourself comfortable. We're going to have books also since so much book distribution is there. If you like to distribute books, there will be bags with books that you can use as we march in the streets. You can recreate these wonderful pastimes that you all, built in this temple. And there will be also dinner boxes, prashanam boxes that are going to be in the bus. So after we come back from Harinam, those devotees who are staying in the hotel, we're going to take you there. But you already have taken your dinner, so we close it for the day. Thank you so much again. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol.